Welcome to Igniting Imagination. I'm your host, Lisa Greenwood. This season, we're inviting you behind the scenes of Texas Methodist Foundation and Wesleyan Impact Partners, partly to introduce you to the ministry we do. Oftentimes, folks only experience one aspect of our ministry and don't realize the breadth of how we engage ministry and congregations. We also want to explore questions that we wrestle with alongside churches, nonprofits, and leaders every day. Whether we're talking about leadership learning and innovation, generosity, investments, loans, grants, or organizational health, our hope is that these conversations spark imagination for what faithful leadership can look like in this moment. Today's episode is one that I think will surprise you. When most people hear the word grant, they think about funding. They think about applications, deadlines, and dollars, understandably. But behind every grant decision are much deeper questions. What are the assets this organization is stewarding, and to what end? What makes a church or nonprofit ready, not just for funding, but for greater impact? To help us explore these questions, I'm joined by two of my colleagues at Texas Methodist Foundation and Wesleyan Impact Partners. And it's worth noting that TMF works with Texas and New Mexico, and Wesleyan Impact Partners is national. And though my colleagues work with both organizations, currently only TMF offers grants. Justin Gould is our Chief Philanthropy Officer. He leads our work in philanthropy and charitable gift planning, helping connect generous people with the ministries and causes they care about most. Justin has spent his career helping individuals and organizations steward resources for lasting impact. I'm also joined by Wendolyn Abel, our Vice President of Grants. Wendolyn brings years of experience in nonprofit leadership, grant making, and community development. She works closely with churches and organizations seeking funding, but just as importantly, she helps discern where investment can lead to meaningful and lasting change. Together, Justin and Wendolyn have a unique vantage point. Every year, they encounter hundreds of ministries, innovative ideas, and faithful leaders. They see what challenges churches are facing, where new possibilities are emerging, and what often separates ministries that are simply surviving from those that are ready to flourish. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on grant making, not to teach you how to write a better application, but to help us all think more deeply about what it means to become the kind of ministry that's ready for investment. Let's listen to our conversation. Welcome, Justin and Wendolyn. I'm so excited about this conversation. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
So, before we talk about grants and investing in ministries, I'd love for our listeners to have an opportunity to get to know each of you. So, I'm going to start with a question just to kind of launch us into that conversation. There's so many things that you could say about your backgrounds and who you are and what you do. But if you can think of a person or maybe church or an organization that invested in you early in your life, someone who saw something in you, maybe even before you saw it in yourself. Could you share something like that with us?
Sure. For me, my father was a minister, so I'm a preacher's kid. So I go
Mhm.
back to when we were assigned to Turner Chapel AME Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Mhm.
where as a preacher's kid, you know, you get the Easter speech and you get the Christmas pageant speech and you get all the special holiday speeches, which as a young kid, I didn't know that I actually could do. That I didn't know that I could stand in public and actually
Mm.
say things. And so I thought that it was being forced on me. But later I see that that was my beginning of being able to do public speaking from having to do it back at Turner Chapel AME Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So
Ah,
that's the church that poured into me very early in my life.
that's so great. When you started, I thought you were getting the speech, like, as in, now here's what you need to do and how you need to behave as the preacher's kid. But
Well, got that
you were
too,
given,
but
yeah, sure. But you were given opportunity
yeah.
to speak and to share. And
And
I
that was
love that you're
scary at
able.
first as a 6 or 7 year old kid to speak to the entire church and your
Wow.
Easter speech, but continually having to do that year after year, I
Yeah.
got better.
Yeah. They were
Well,
pouring into you.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
piggyback on Wendolyn's story because
Uh-huh.
my first work trip with Wendolyn, we went back up to Indianapolis, and I saw that community at play decades later. And the
Nice.
way in which she engaged with the members of that church, still today, you, you could see the spirit of each of them shining through Wendolyn and vice versa. And it was so sweet to see. So I'm glad you shared that story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I would love to. I'm thinking about my own discernment path as a fundraiser, and there are any number of people along the way. But ultimately, I think the folks at Southwestern really, really invested in me, from President Shrum to Rick McKelvey, Cindy Locke, Georgianne Hewitt.
Mhm.
Each of them saw something for me in terms of building relationships with our donors and our alumni and any number of folks that just I didn't really understand until after the fact. And I just really loved that time at Southwestern. There was a spirit of curiosity and abundance within that group that really permitted me and others to really shine. And I love that. So,
Nice.
yeah, Southwestern.
Nice. Well, we get the benefit of the ways that folks have poured into you. We get that benefit every day. And I think the relationships that we build with our constituents get the benefit of that too. So I'm grateful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you think about those ways that you were poured into, how do they shape the way that you think about investing in others today?
So I realized that it is it takes time, that it's a journey. So investment is a journey. It is not just
Mm,
a one-time thing. It's not just a one-time conversation. It's a
mm,
journey to get to the outcomes or the return of the investment is a journey to get to.
mm,
And it's not something that comes immediately. And so them pouring into me and investing into me, and still at this age being a part of my journey and walking with me through that. It's the same way that I think that we look at our philosophy and how we and who we provide grants to. It's just part of a journey to invest in them, and for not only for us to see the return on the investment, but for them to see the return on the investment, and they can see the impact of the work that they're doing. So I think it's just a time thing, and it's a
mm.
relationship thing, and it's a journey thing. Yeah.
I
Nice.
think, yeah, to build on that, I think, at any point in any journey, different gifts are needed. And I think what that experience in Southwestern really shaped for me was that let's as leaders, as as partners in ministry, let's really find the gifts and graces that each person brings to that journey and put them in a position to really elevate the whole. So, what's our intended impact? What are we leaning towards in terms of outcomes? And then how might the gifts that each of us brings to the table be leveraged in ways that gets us there in in the right ways?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love hearing about how you've been shaped and how it now shapes how you do your ministry. And before we go any further, will you give us a quick snapshot of your role at Texas Methodist Foundation Wesleyan Impact Partners?
Go ahead, Wendolyn.
So my role at Texas Methodist Foundation Wesleyan Impact is I am the Vice President of Grants Ministry. And what that really looks like is it's more than just awarding grants. It really is building relationships and learning about new ministries and new nonprofits and the work that they are doing in their communities. And so, while it is one of the most fulfilling jobs that I've had in my career, it's also one of the hardest jobs that I've had in my
Mm,
career because there are so many organizations. That are doing such amazing work within Texas and New Mexico in trying to say which ones we can partner with this year and which ones we may not be able to. But I think in essence, what we have kind of wanted to be is a foundation and a funder that is more than just a funder that gives money, that we really want to partner and collaborate with those that we fund with. And so we see ourselves as partners and collaborators with churches and ministries in the work that they're already doing and being able to help them tell their story.
That's so good. We're going to jump more into that. So great setup.
Yeah.
Justin, tell us about your
Yeah,
role.
I'll build on that. So I'm the Chief Philanthropy Officer at Texas Methodist Foundation with Wesleyan Impact Partners. In August, I will have been here 13 years. And
Yeah.
so for the last decade plus, I've had the unique privilege of working with both individuals and families to help them think about their story. We kind of operate under the philosophy that everyone can be a philanthropist. And I've experienced that gratefully. And what that means for us as an organization is that how do we take that and help churches and nonprofits think about long-term sustainable funding through the form of endowments and other charitable gifts that allow them to really put their plans in place for the organizations that they love. So we have that wonderful opportunity to think holistically about philanthropic support and stories and impact. And so I'm just grateful for the chance to be in this ministry.
That's great. So helpful to have that picture from both of you. And Justin, I want to kind of follow up on that and specifically related to grant making. Um, because as Wendolyn has said, it's not simply about giving money away. Um, at least that's not the whole of what's happening. So, can you kind of take us to a little bit of a meta level of why do foundations make grants in the first place?
Sure. I think it starts with families and individuals, and the foundations find themselves in that unique space of being the go-between or the partner to help individuals really put that charitable vision in place. And so, grant dollars really are an expression of a donor's vision, um, their desire for change in a community, their desire to have their own, sometimes have their own story shared, so that there's a legacy around that, so that their family can understand why they made the decisions that they made and understand why they do the things they do. And the grant just happens to be the financial expression of a lot of things that are circling and swarming underneath and inside of us
Mm.
that really the hope for is healthy communities and healthy people and people who are invested in, who have the chance to really tap into their own potential so that they can share that and lift up the whole.
That go between word feels really important. Like we are a conduit, if you will, a partner to help those individuals put their priorities, their passions, their charitable. Um, what are the right words?
Well, there's capital that can be directed to really help
Yeah,
communities. It's that
yeah,
philanthropic capital that is, we don't want it on the sidelines. Let's put it into the communities where it belongs.
yeah.
And that's such a wonderful space to play in. And so the grants that we offer are really a reflection of decades of relationships that
Mm,
TMF's been in the position to support. And wow, what a
Yeah.
gift.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
So say a word about how grant making fits into the TMF's larger mission.
I think what grant making does and how it comes across is it is an entryway for many of our grantees into the other services that Texas Methodist Foundation provides. And
Mhm.
so when we go and we meet with our grantees and we look at them, and so not only are we looking at the programs and services that they can provide, that's the smaller piece, but what's the bigger piece of will you be here in 50 years? And what does it take for your services, your program, your ministry to still be, in fact, impactful many years down the road? And so part of that is looking at how can we help our grantees again look at sustainability. How can they look at ways in which they can talk to their donors about investing in doing those type of charitable gifts and tools to be able to help them in the future. And so we're kind of odd as a funder in that sense that we not only care about the program or the ministry, but we also care about the organization and its sustainability for long periods of time. And so that's kind of how we pull that together. Yeah.
I would say, adding to that, I think, grants really fits into our mission, which, to empower the church in the achievement of its God appointed mission. When I say that out loud, it really is the marriage of two sides of the different sides of the coin. You have the funding side, the donor side, which we're really in that space of helping people tap into their generosity. And then they trust us to be the delivery partner on that, on empowering the church. And, things change over time. But that inherent charitable, those impulses that we have, are rooted in something deep. And as society changes, TMF and other funders are in really unique positions to help those charitable impulses continue to maintain the integrity of what that donor really intended from the beginning. And so, whether it's healthcare or scholarships, when we're empowering the church, we're really tapping into that spirit of generosity in people and helping them put that in place in the community. And so that is really, the beautiful work of charitable giving.
We often say at Texas Methodist Foundation and Wesleyan Impact Partners that our client is the mission of the church. And part of what I'm hearing you all say is that you're helping individuals with their generosity and organizations lean into what their calling is for this moment. Like lean into their purpose, their mission, and we want to be in service to that. And I so appreciate how grants and the granting process fits into helping those organizations stand tall so that they can realize their purposes for this greater vision of what it means to make the world a more loving, generous place. Yeah.
I mean, the organizations we partner with, they're operating at the local level, the neighborhood level. Let's
Mhm.
trust them. That is empowerment. That let's trust them to understand and invest in the things that they know, and the things that they feel and the things that they experience. And that's grants at its best.
Yeah, I mean, it's recognizing that the organizations and the churches are the experts in their ministry and they're the experts in their community. And so when you recognize that, it allows them to flourish and it allows them to grow and it allows them to go deeper and to have a greater impact in their community.
Mm, yeah. I want to get a little bit granular with you, Wendolyn, because we know in granting processes and application process, there we give X number, we have X number of dollars, we give to X number of recipients, and yet we have tenfold of that who apply. And so when you first open a grant application, what are you hoping to discover? Like what tells you that a ministry might be ready to be invested in?
I think we look at our ministries open, ready to listen, and ready to learn, right? Um, those aspects kind of help create, in our thought, a thriving community and a thriving church. When you're open to listening and to learning new ways to do things, or looking at how the ministry already is and what can we do to enhance that, what can be done to enhance that ministry so that it becomes more impactful to the community. So when we open and look at an application for the first time, um, and we may or may not know this organization, we look at a couple of things. One, we look at, do they know who they are, right? Not necessarily what they do for services, but who they are. Who are the gifts that they give to their community, be it a safe place, be it a place to listen, be it a staff that is compassionate to them. So we look at, do they know the gifts they give their community? Then we look at, do they know who they serve, not what they serve? So many organizations know what they serve. They may serve people who are in poverty, single parents, um, neighborhoods that are in food deserts. But do they know who they serve? Do they know that the people that they serve are compassionate? Do they know who in their neighborhood makes the best tamales? Do they know who is the mayor of their community? So we look at those two things. And then the third thing that we look at is we look at, do they recognize what the potential is in their community if their mission or vision statement came to life, right? So if every household had access to healthy and affordable food, what would that look like? That the kids could go to bed and they weren't hungry, and that they would go to school and be ready for learning, and that the parents wouldn't be stressed out at work because they don't have to worry about, do I pick up food or do I pay my electric bill? So we look at organizations who understand those things. And those are kind of like the basics of asset-based community development. And so do you see the gifts that the people you serve have, that who you are as an organization, and then the potential? And those are the things that we look at when we first are reading an application for someone.
That's so good. I'm hearing clarity of identity, clarity of
Mhm.
purpose, um, clarity of around who are their neighbors. Like, do they really know
Yeah,
them? Do they know what assets there already
yeah.
exists in the neighborhood, in the community, and then potential? Those feel so important. What are some of the biggest like misconceptions that churches have about grant funding?
The first one is that grants will solve all of their problems.
Okay.
We just throw some additional money at this. This is going to work and be wonderful. And
Mm,
that's not necessarily the case. I think that for churches in particular, looking at them to say, one, grants don't solve everything, but two, that grants are an opportunity for you to build sustainability, or for to look at grant dollars as a way of enhancing ministries that you already have. And so, because the creation of new ministries may or may not be what your community has needs. It may be that there's a ministry that you are already doing that needs to be enhanced and opened up to the community. And so when churches can see that grants are not a band-aid when you actually need stitches, right? There's they provide a different thing, right? It does not heal everything. Um, and
hmm.
so I think that's, if I just had some money, this would go well, is not necessarily the case in any organization, churches and nonprofits. It is really kind of being intentional of what you want to do with the ministry that you're requesting funding from.
I would just add to that. One of the misconceptions is that um, there aren't individuals in their networks that might support this too. So when you look at Giving USA data, which is produced every year, roughly 25 to 30% of total dollars contributed comes from corporate and foundation partnerships. The balance comes from individuals.
Hmm.
So when we think about misconceptions, can we help an organization reframe who might be willing and want to support them, whether it's us or not? So I just think some balance around where the funding sources come from is a really important piece of this
Yeah.
conversation.
That's so good because they might be depending on grants and they have a whole grant writing and grant, um, a whole system around how they can get more grants when really, if they could build up their donor base and
Yeah.
relationships, that would be so critical.
I'm thinking about a church in South Austin that, and getting in the technicalities a little bit here, but a church has created its own donor advised fund. And the reason they created that donor advised fund is that they think there's an opportunity for folks who are in their community but not attending their church to really believe and partner in their mission. And it's a food ministry, and I think they're right. And so let's think about outside of grant funding, what possibilities might exist for other partnerships. We can get pretty narrow sometimes in our thinking, and so I think part of our job is to help expand that imagination a little bit for who else might be in ministry with us and how might that happen.
That's so good. And it goes directly back to what you said earlier, Wendolyn, about how the grant process might just be the first step of a larger relationship with the philanthropy team at TMF to think more holistically about how they sustain their ministry today, but long into the future, how they build that donor base, how they or create a DAF, how they make those invitations, how they build those relationships, what those tools are,
And even how do they quantify their ministry so that other foundations and other funders who may not be faith-based would want to partner with them. And so how do I measure the ministries that we're already doing in terms that other donors understand? And so even helping to do that is part of what it is that we see. It's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the capacity building that you have made such a priority, Wendolyn, that I think is really important. I'd love for you to share a minute about the event that you have held the last few
Mhm.
years, and
Yeah.
and yeah,
So
talk a little bit about that.
yeah, so every February now we have what we call our grantee gathering. And actually, the idea came from our grantees. We meet with them quarterly. We were meeting with them virtually. And one of them said, hey, we wouldn't mind coming together and meet. And so we have a 1 day event where our grantees are able to get not only the networking, but education opportunities. And we've had internal speakers, we've had our general counsel talk about nonprofit one-on-one, and we've had our members from our philanthropy team that are talking about donor cultivation and donor nurturing and how do we do this. And we've had people from our marketing department that talked about how do you better tell your stories. This past February, we were able to do something a little different. We were able to invite 10 funders, 10 other funders from other foundations throughout the state to come in and to sit down with our nonprofits and our churches and spend 10 minutes with them as they practice their pitch and got immediate feedback. And so we
Wow.
are still hearing wonderful stories and appreciation for them being able to do that. They didn't know who the funder was. It just was to sit in front of a funder. What is your 2 minute, 1.5 minute pitch? And then to get that immediate feedback. Have you thought about sharing this? Have you thought about sharing this? And then we had a panel discussion with them at the end of the day. And so again, part of our walking along the journey, we recognize, and as you've talked about, that what is ours to do around capacity building and what is ours to do around education. And our nonprofit leaders and church leaders have said to us, we need more education. We need the capacity to be able to do things. And so how do we balance that between, being the foundation and yet walking along? And as we walk along, our people are saying, hey, we need to know more. And so every year it's grown. Every year it gets bigger. Every year I get scared because it's like, how many people are going to show up this year? And every year it seems to work. And so we're excited, starting plans for the 2027 February event. But I think our grantees really appreciate not only the in-person event, but the quarterly um, virtual events or virtual sessions that we hold 3 times a year, where they also can network, where we offer educational opportunities, and for them to be able to share with us feedback about our process, how we do things, and how they feel about their relationship with Texas Methodist Foundation.
You're making me, I'm going back to one of the earlier questions about how does grants fit in with the mission. And one of the things that I think is a real gift to be part of this staff is that TMF is in a wonderful position to help convene people.
Mhm.
And this grantee gathering that Wendolyn just described is just another expression of that ability to convene.
Mm.
And it's an ability, but it's also like a huge opportunity because we don't have all the answers. But when you get 80 people in a room, and then you get 120 people in a room, and then you get 186 people in the room who are all thinking about the same things,
Yeah.
um, and then thinking about them in new ways, that really is a catalyst for change. And I love that about,
Mm.
not only are we kind of convening the beneficiaries of these grants, but that network of funders that Wendolyn has knitted
Yeah.
together is so cool. And for them to know that we can ask questions of each other without the expectations of a clear answer is an environment that I love to work in.
Yeah.
And so I think TMF has really done a good job of creating space for that convening, whether that's on the learning innovation side, the grant side. And I think, and so I just want to name that is a huge reality and an opportunity for us to really steward those gifts that we've been given, the charitable gifts over
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah. And it is so in line with our theory of change.
Mhm.
And that is when you're in an environment where everything is changing so rapidly, how do you learn what nobody can teach you really? Because we're in this environment, right? And so how do you do that? You have peer learning. You get together with others who are asking good and hard questions, and you share ideas and you ignite imagination for what's possible. And that's so core to TMF and Wesleyan Impact Partners, and very much a part of that grantee gathering.
Yeah.
I think at the core of it is like when we can network, we can share some of what we've
Yeah.
learned, but like let's have conversation around the table and what questions are coming from you all, and have the grantees leading sessions as you all have
Yeah.
done.
And it
Um,
also it goes back to when you talked about capacity building. And so sometimes building and learning more capacity comes from your peers. And so, like I share with the grantees all the time, that the pond of funding is basically has stayed the same, right?
mm,
But it's more goldfish that are in that pond, right? There's just more goldfish in the pond. And so I always share with my grantees, in the words of Dr. Seuss, who is my favorite philosopher, that you want to turn your goldfish into a one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, so that you're a red fish, blue fish in a pond of goldfishes, so that funders and donors and investors want to engage with you. And so when you can show how your ministry is truly having an impact on your neighborhood and community. And it's not just, and you know who you serve and you know who you are and you know what that potential is, that turns your goldfish into a redfish, bluefish. And then other funders, other investors, others want to walk down this journey with you because they see the value in what you do.
yeah, that's so good. So, I mentioned this earlier, but we necessarily, with a limited number of funds and a lot of applicants, there are some no's that happen in the midst. So, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the reasons a ministry might hear no,
Yeah.
at least the first time or
Yeah.
initially? Well,
So first I tell organizations and churches that no is not no forever. No is just no for today.
hmm,
It's just today because either limited dollars, a lot of times it's limited dollars. Just a lot of times there's not anything that's inherently wrong with their application. It is just
hmm,
that, again, more fish in a pond means that you have to make your fish red and blue because there's just so much competition. So, first of all, no is not no forever. No is no for today. And that no may come because of a variety of things. Sometimes we have organizations, first of all, who don't know who they are, who they serve, and what the potential is. And that's a quirky kind of question for our grants ministry. Not every foundation asks that. So when they see those questions, it kind of throws them off, and they want to give us the same answer of the percentage of poverty, the percentage of people that, and not the who. So for some, that may be the concern. For others, it could be a matter of you want the foundation to fund 100% of your ministry. And no foundation wants to fund 100% of anything, because if you don't get the grant next year, are you saying that the need has gone away because the money has gone away? And so looking at do they have a balance in their finances, a balance in their budget for their program. So we look at that thing, and then we look at, do you align with what we fund? So we don't do capital, we don't do construction, we're not going to be able to help you buy real estate. So we're not doing lobby things, we don't do scholarships for individuals. And so are you aligning with what it is that we actually provide funding for? And then sometimes it is competitive in nature. And so sometimes it's just not that there was anything wrong, but that there may have been applications that were stronger. And that has nothing to do with it, because the evaluation of an application is subjective, right? You and I, Lisa, may see the same application, and you see it one way and I see it another. And so I tell my best advice for organizations before they hit the submit button is to have somebody outside of their organization review that application, because you understand what your alphabet soup means, but somebody else reading it probably does not. And so, no, it's not no forever. No, it's just no for today. And we've had a nice number of organizations who have had no said to them once and maybe even twice, and finally have got like, oh my goodness, we got the grant. Because even in no, we try to walk with you through the no.
Say a little bit more about that. What
Thank
happens?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much there that's unsaid. Keep going.
Right. So what happens when you say no to someone? And I mean your
Yeah,
process.
our process when we say no to someone. So one of the first things that we do, and this is coming from the perspective of someone who used to write grants and who used to not ever hear from, yes, no, whatever. So one of the things that we do for those organizations that we have unfortunately have to say no, not at this time to, is that we conduct a webinar, because normally they get tripped up on those three things. Do you know who you are, who you serve, and what the potential is? And so we have a webinar afterwards where they can take their application and they can look at it while we go over. These are some of the strengths of what a good answer looks like, right? And so that they can kind of see what that looks like. So we invite everyone who received a denial for that cycle to participate and to come into that webinar situation. And then we have our evaluators, because Sarah and I, we can't evaluate 373 applications at the same time. And so our evaluators will make some notes at times and say, hey, this application looks really rough. However, the program or ministry that they're describing looks like it's something that we may want to learn more about. And so we begin to look at those organizations and begin to not necessarily walk with them, but at least talk with them and see what they are about. And then to be able to share with them, these are the types of things that may be able to help you in the future, not only with Texas Methodist Foundation, but with other grant makers. And normally those are smaller nonprofits or smaller congregations who don't have grant writers on their staffs to be able to do that. And so that's part of what it is that we do to be able to help and to walk alongside organizations who we've had to say no to for today.
What you're describing using the no as the key moment to build that relationship, that is really what happens. And
Mm.
so that no is an opportunity to learn, for that curiosity to continue to be cultivated. But you're really using that no as a chance to build a
Mhm.
relationship
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
partner,
Absolutely.
um, and and for them to get a deeper sense of where might there be gaps, what are the things that we could strengthen, and how might we do that better together moving forward.
And are we a
So
good fit for each other? Because sometimes I'll
right,
walk away and I'll go, I understand why this was a no, because it's
yeah,
not a philosophical fit for us. And sometimes if it's for them to say, you know what, this is asking too much. And
Mm.
so maybe this is not right now a direction that we need to go for funding. And so it gives us an opportunity to kind of not necessarily go on a date, but to kind of meet at Starbucks and say, "Hey, I like this. You like this. I don't like this." And that way, it's not a lot of investment time, at least on their behalf, because they can see up front this is what it is that Texas Methodist Foundation is looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I want to ask one more question before we get to the rapid fire. Um, a number of folks listening to our podcast and listening to this one may not be planning to apply for a grant, maybe from us or anywhere. But I think there are some lessons in what we've said that could still help them strengthen their ministry. So I'm curious what lessons you think from this conversation would help our listeners strengthen ministry.
One of the things is to quantify it, right? If to show what that impact is. So, for example, there's a church in Dallas that I was working with, um, and they have a run club, right? And so, in looking at the run club, um, I asked the questions: how do you know how the impact of this run club is for its run members, right? So they just started conducting a survey. Um, you know, my health is better. My mental health is better. When I'm walking or running, I have a more effective prayer life, and I'm meditating in that. And they were able to look at those data points, present them to the church, and the church and the congregation felt like, okay, the dollars that I'm giving to this run club have an impact. And so they felt better about giving to that ministry. The other thing that it did was, when the leader of that run club went to where he gets his running shoes from and was talking about it in quantifiable natures at the store then said, well, if your members come in, we'll give them a discount on their shoes,
Mm,
right? And so
mm,
being able to say, we're doing this ministry, but this is what the impact really is, helps in that maybe you don't need to apply for a grant, just to be able to tell your story so that when you talk about it, others will want to participate and maybe even give. So, if anything, it would be quantifying what the impact of that ministry is in your community.
yeah. And
you said share your story, and that
yeah.
is, for me, that's the key ingredient here. It we practice those pitches with applicants or with the grantees in February, and that opportunity to really hone in on why they do what they do, and it's so important. And so you just don't know when you're going to find yourself with an opportunity to share your story. So spend a little time practicing it. Um, you know, we can meet some incredible people in an airport or on an airplane,
Yes.
and you just never know where that partnership might emerge. And so, even if the grant application is in a near future, I think honing in on that
Mm,
story uh, is really
yeah.
a key piece of helping your ministry grow and evolve.
Yeah. And it strikes me that the things you're looking for, Gwendolyn, in a grant application are true of all of us in ministry, like knowing your identity, having clarity around identity and purpose, having clarity about who your neighbor is,
Yeah.
and then what's the difference God is calling us to make? What's that potential that exists there that we want to lean into? Those feel core no matter
Mhm.
what kind of ministry
Mhm.
you're engaged in. And so I think those are
Absolutely.
really good
Yeah.
pillars.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to rapid fire. So complete these sentences. The ministries most ready for grant investment are.
Listening and changing.
Okay.
You didn't say to continue on with the definition, so those are my words. Listen,
No, that's good. No, that's good. These are rapid fire. Justin, do you have an answer to that one?
Yeah, I think, let's see, the ministries most ready for grant investment are curious.
Okay. Curious. Nice. And there's a little theme there.
Yeah.
So I wish every church knew
I'll go back
what.
That's
to
a big one.
grants don't fix everything and they're not forever.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wish every church knew they had the power to invite broad support.
Mm.
Hmm.
And going back to that, everyone's a philanthropist philosophy. I wish every church would have the confidence to invite partnerships,
Yeah.
invite donors into their ministry.
Yes. And they're sitting in the pews every day and
They
they're
are.
not asking always.
They
I mean,
are.
sometimes, but not
And
always,
sometimes
right?
they're living
And
across
Yeah.
the street from the church and we haven't gone across the street to say hello.
yeah.
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 Knowing who your
Knowing
neighbors
who
are,
your
right?
neighbors.
Okay. People listening to this podcast can reach out to me at,
Uh,
how's that for a rapid fire?
Rapid fire. Grants at Texas Methodist Foundation.org. That's the central place where all grants inquiries go. And
Super.
Sarah, Rich, and I will make sure that there's an answer to your question and
Super.
inquiry. Yeah.
Super.
Or feel free to call 512-583-1944. I love these conversations, so would welcome the chance to visit with you about
Great,
them.
great. And if they aren't looking for a grant but want more conversation about philanthropy and charitable services, they can still do grants
Hmm.
at
Yes.
texasmethodistfoundation.org, and you all will help them get with the right
Hmm.
folks. Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Lisa, thanks for the
Yeah.
chance to talk about
Appreciate
this
it
today. It
so
was so
much.
fun.
Oh, this was
This was
great.
good. This was
Y'all are
fun.
awesome. So appreciate your ministry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.